Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio.
Quinn is an artist witch and fanatical gardener who barely attended college at Tyler School of Art. Her roots are in Philadelphia, but she currently resides in the rural South. Her published works include various articles and short stories in witchy zines and magazines. The Moon Manual is her debut book. Morgan, second person we're interviewing today. With an open and avid mind, Morgan is an artist, author, witch, and generally multifaceted Gemini, filling her life with friends, family, gardens, festivals, and a small collection of exceptionally perfect pets. With much of her roots in the swampy rural South, she also attended the Savannah College of Art and Design and received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Many years later, she finally decided to use it. Quinn and Morgan, welcome to WitchLit.
Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you both on. So folks who've listened will know that we've had like one other show with co-authors. So it may be a little different for new listeners that we'll have both folks answer questions. But the first question we ask everybody on the show, and since I introduced Quinn first, Morgan, do you want to take this one first, is why write? In this age of social media and videos and all that, why write books?
It feels like there is no way to not to. I genuinely feel like no matter what I have done, I have always written as well. Even if it was just for fun, for passion, for whatever reason, I've just never considered not writing.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be the same for me as well. I come from a really big family of librarians and English teachers and other writers, so it felt very natural to do so. I've just been doing it since I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, and you both went to art school at some point or another. So was writing always part of that, or did one kind of take a backseat to the other?
I mean, for me, I feel like writing was always what I was drawn to. Not that I didn't pursue art earlier in life, but I don't know. I mean, to me, they kind of go hand in hand. I guess I've always been drawn to like a lot of like multimedia things like comic books where you kind of have both intertwined. So, you know, that felt kind of like both go together. And, you know, if you've seen in our book, that's very visual. So yes. I like the idea of something very visual going along with the text, I guess.
Morgan, is that same for you or?
Honestly, I've always considered myself like 50% writer, 50% artist. I've always loved the two. And unfortunately, though, growing up, I got really discouraged with writing and for familial reasons began to believe that wasn't like a career that I could pursue. So in my own rebellion, I chose the next best thing, which was art, and went to school for comic books and then finally was able to kind of get back out of that and start writing again. But it's always been a love of telling stories either way. So
yeah. And I mean, for listeners who haven't seen the book, the Moon Manual, though, one of the things I love about it is it reminds me of like those first notebooks you keep when you start, you know, either practicing witchcraft or herbs or, you know, something, because it looks like a gridded notebook with pages kind of glued in, I guess is kind of the way to describe it, because there's a little bit of a drop shadow on the text boxes. So, and it has each moon phase has each sign of the moon phases has like an illustrated page with the types of magic associated with that sign. So it's it definitely has that kind of comic book feel about it, I guess.
And I think that Morgan and I have made a great team because she is in my opinion, a much more talented artist than I am. And I think that we've had a good balance of like writing and art and both of us being, interested in both sides of it, but not, kind of like taking strengths from each other to get it together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So what was the seed for this particular book? So you kind of both have the art and writing background, but why the Moon Manual? So why this book?
Well, I have always wanted to write, and this kind of came around not as a book per se. We had started our Instagram account sort of around when the world shut down because of the pandemic, and there was a month where, we weren't working and we had to do something, and I had just a bunch of graphics that we had kind of made, and we just started posting them, and the account kind of got big, and people were asking if we had a book, and we didn't have a book, but we had a lot of notes because this was an interest for so long, and we kind of realized that we could make it into a book, and that there were people there who would just pick it up immediately if we got it done.
The fact that there were people asking for it is really a good driving force.
It was exciting to have people interested in something we were doing. Yes.
Yeah, having an audience clamoring for a book is definitely not a bad place to be. So how did you go about publishing?
So the book is self-published. I had worked for several years with a small indie publisher, and I did some editing with them, had a good idea of sort of like their process of how they get books published. And I had just kind of seen, not at that publishing house per se, but other authors that I had met while working there who had just kind of gotten the short end of the stick when it came to like their book deal. Like it wasn't as like exciting to have a book and think you're getting paid, and then like there's all of these things that the fees and expenses that seem to get placed on them. And it might have just been because a lot of these people were getting published at smaller publishing houses as well, but it seemed like self-publishing was not a terrible way to go.
Yeah, I do think there is sometimes for folks that with their first publishing contract is a little bit of sticker shock isn't the right word, but it's kind of like that. It's just like, I'm going to make like $10 on this.
Right. It's like,
this is the reality of it.
Yeah, you think you're like, for me growing up, I had always wanted to be a writer, and then kind of getting into that industry and realizing that there was probably no feasible way for me to support myself and like actually do that was awful.
Devastating, right?
Yes, it was terrible. So, trying to figure out a way to make it so that it is at least, if we're making money from it, we get to choose what is happening with it. Maybe it's my need for control. I don't know.
I really do have to say it though, like the whole reason that I could ever even achieve this point of being in publish is because of Quinn and how much she knew and was able to put into all of this. Oh my goodness. I was so out of the water.
Yeah, it is nice to have a handhold through that. With my first book, I went with a kind of like a hybrid publisher. I did a lot of the groundwork. They handled the publishing. We split royalties, which were not a lot. And then they restructured it. I got the rights back to all my books. So my husband and I formed our own publishing company.
Oh, that is exciting.
Republished them. And we have done better on our own, with a little bit more control and, the books. So, I'm not retiring or buying a Lamborghini.
But it's nice to have the control of your artistic works. There's not a corporation making decisions for you.
I think that is a big part of it. And when we're recording this is September, and there was just, I don't know if you all saw this in the news, there was just a thing came out about the Random House Penguin lawsuit that, like, you know, out of their 58,000 published titles every year, half of them sell less than a dozen books.
Whoa. Yeah, it's crazy. I've looked into some of the numbers with things like that, and for what I feel like we've been able to do, I'm very proud of us, because it's real. The book industry can be very frustrating to navigate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and if it's your book,
hard part is writing the book.
Yeah, the hardest part, you know, you get the book out there, and then you realize, especially as a self-published, I'm sure you guys have both realized this, that, you know, when you're self-published, you're everything. You're the writer, you're the designer, you're the, you know, the actual publisher itself, and then you're the marketing team.
Yes. It was nice. We kind of were able to fall into that sort of marketing thing with our social media kind of being already set up when we came into it, though.
That kind of being the headliner for the whole thing. I think it really aided in how well the book did.
Yeah, you guys had the groundswell. Is doing is a good way to, like, let's keep that rolling.
It's not
That's
done
great.
yet.
It's not done yet.
No.
So what did this book is very astrology based, obviously. It's about working with the moon. So what did the research look like for y'all? Were these things that you had already had going in your own practice, or laying the book out, did you have to do a lot of research about what you wanted each of these? And I guess maybe talk a little bit about how the book is laid out, because I think that will help listeners kind of, if they aren't familiar with your social media already, they'll kind of know more about what the book is.
Well, I know, to start out with, we had a lot of our own personal notes that it came from. I mean, I've been dabbling in witchcraft since probably my last year of middle school, early high school. And I've always felt like a lot of, not all, like, there's just there, to me, getting all of the information and sort of sorting it out into ways that it made me feel, you know, better about it. Sort of sifting through it and making patterns, kind of connecting all of those things is really satisfying. So in a lot of my own notebooks, I had things kind of pre-organized, but there was a good amount of research that went into it after we decided that we were going to write a book. Morgan had a lot of notes that we pulled from as well. Not saying they were like all my notes. You know, when we first started looking at it, it was like, I have a lot of notes, but I don't think I have enough for a whole book. You know, it was a good basis to start from. Anyways, I don't know. What do you think, Morgan?
It's very, very, very similar. Yeah, same sentiments over here. A lot of it's just our personal notes that we have collected over the years. I too have dabbled in witchcraft, or began that kind of journey somewhere around high school, and started to really get into it a lot more in university. And once we put it all together, we realized just how much content, I guess you could say, we had. And putting it all together was, it's almost been just as helpful to me as it hopefully has been to the reader.
It's a good way to sort through kind of all of the past notes. And I know there were several very well-worn books that got, you know, that we used as some references for some of that information, whether it was in our notes before or not.
And of course, like, I feel like you realize how much you don't know when you go to actually write about a subject.
Right.
Yes.
I feel like there was a lot of, like, I could go on and on about certain signs. Like, I mean, we're both Geminis, so we probably, like, knew way too much about anything that has to do with Gemini, or, you know, our rising and moon signs that are very well researched, you know, all of the attributes that come along with those particular signs. But then there were some that, like, I definitely had to go in and research a lot more, like Capricorn is always, it's like one that I'm not as familiar with, or had not been as familiar with, because at this point it's like, I found out. I don't know.
It made me ask a lot of very personal questions to a lot of friends once I found out their signs.
And you find
How
out
do you feel about this?
Yeah. Or having a lot of people volunteer informations about themselves once they find out what you're writing about.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Because of the opening for the show and kind of, I guess the whole point of the podcast is, partly my Scorpio nature. And so I would have had other Scorpios on, that automatically becomes a topic. So,
I'm a Scorpio moon.
yeah, me too. I am a double
I
Scorpio.
understand. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I should be scarier, but Taurus rising kind of balances me out.
Oh, yeah. Some good friendly, comforting sign.
Yeah, but I do think people is there a reason to study everybody else's sign when you just want to know about yourself? I mean, that's just one of those things. But
It definitely gives you a lot of insight.
Yeah.
With other people.
So one of the things I think is unusual about how the book is laid out, because I was thinking about the way a lot of either astrology or spell books, because this kind of combo, and you have all of the Aries phases of the moon together. So, instead of going through, the moon moves through, the houses every 12 days. So instead of having it set up like that, it's like, if the moon is a full moon in Aries, if the moon is a, new moon in Aries, it's all kind of in one section of the book. And I was saying today, so we're in the waning Aries moon today when we're recording. And it's just a unique way to set it up. And I just kind of wondered if there was a conversation about how you were going to do that, or what that looked like, trying to decide how to lay out the book.
I definitely think it's just set up reference wise, easy to go back. If I were to look at, what is the moon in tonight? Then it would be easier to find a page for that night.
Yeah, I wanted it to be easy to find the page that you wanted to reference for the day, rather than it being necessarily something that you would read back to front, which you could obviously do, but it's more of a reference to, this is what's happening today, how can I get that information and try to find it quickly. And I know that when I had first started laying it out, I wasn't sure, and it just felt very messy to go from the have it set up with the phases and have the have it be here are all the crescent moons, here are all the quarter moons, here are all the full moons, when I didn't know where to fit in. Having those pages are sort of all of the Aries associations at the front of each section felt important, so that you could kind of look up that information separately, because that page in particular, it doesn't have to necessarily be the moon is in Aries today. It's what other planets might be in Aries that could be bringing about some of these energies as the sun in Aries, so having that sort of reference page felt like it was a good opening to then segue into how could that change if the moons are, or if the phase of the moon is changing, versus here are the phases, and then try to bring up that those associations in a different section felt kind of more awkward than how we ended up having it set up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And once you dip into it, it seems really intuitive. Although the one thing I would say, I have it as an ebook, and I think I'm going to have to get a paperback because for a reference book, I think you want it where you can open it and look at it. And I just find it easier to do that with a actual book than an ebook sometimes.
Yeah, I understand. And we've had a lot of people tell us that, in the end of each section, when you open it up, there's oftentimes a small chunk of the page that's kind of left open with that grid. And people have said they've been taking notes and doodling and kind of adding their own stuff to it. And I think that is so awesome that they've been able to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think the grid paper really leans towards that wanting to write it in yourself.
No, that does make sense to me. Well, I always think about like almost like with spell books and cookbooks, like, there's this whole like thing. I think there's actually even like a social media account at Dirty Pages with cookbooks, like where you always turn.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Kind of thing. And so I think with spell books and this, this kind of reference book, like you're going to have that same kind of thing happen, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
And we did with people kind of bringing that information back to us and kind of, us getting that feedback. We actually went and made a workbook to go along with the book as well, which is supposed to be written in and drawn in and colored and touched.
It really just felt natural to have that along with it.
Yeah, that makes sense too. It seems like a natural pairing. So, we're gonna think it was you who brought up just like the kind of struggles early on with writing, and it just made me think about like I think as new writers or like when we're younger, like we kind of look to a lot of other writers for advice and things like that. So were there things that were particularly helpful or not helpful, like in your writing paths, or like I don't know. I mean, even as a published writer, like I still really struggle with imposter syndrome, and just
do you
guys want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about that Scorpio topic? There you go.
I definitely agree. Still struggling as well with similar things of that sort. I really just got out of art and writing for a couple of years and did day jobs. And when I really began to miss it was when I began to realize that it was something really worth fighting for. And I've just kind of kept pushing it from there, and it gets better and better every day.
Yeah, Quinn, do you have thoughts on that too, or?
I'm just trying to think how to answer. I don't know. I could probably. I would have to pass. I'm not sure how to answer at the moment.
Oh no, that's
I'm
all
sorry.
Good. No, you don't need to apologize. As I said at the beginning, we don't have rules on this podcast. So,
I don't want to hold up everybody going, no.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all good. But I guess what are the things, like, if you do struggle with those kind of things, I mean, having a co-author is kind of a different relationship, especially if you're also friends. Like, so what has that been like, writing the book, having the social media account, publishing it, all that? How has that been like for your friendship with each other and having that support of a co-author?
Amazing.
Yeah. I think that we feed off each other's energies in a really great way.
This wholeheartedly would not have been possible for me at all if it wasn't for Quinn.
Same for, we've been able to like push each other really well. And I think that we've both for a long time have wanted to do something artistic. We both went to art school. We just needed, like, having each other as support has been amazing. To have another person that kind of understands that drive to want to create and like make things. I mean, I didn't get
how hard it is.
Yes, and having somebody that's willing to put in that work is, amazing. Because it is a lot of work.
Yeah. From everything, kind of like we talked about, from writing it to actually then kind of flogging it at the end, like it's work from beginning to end. Yeah, I'm a little envious of the co-author thing, I had to be honest. Although, I mean, my husband and I do a lot of the work on my books together, but he doesn't help me write. In fact, he won't read them until he's ready to lay them out. Because he's like, I don't want to miss anything. Like, it gives me a better opportunity to catch mistakes if I haven't already read it when I do it. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, so I kind of have to find that support elsewhere.
Yeah, it's having people around you that support you and understand why you're doing it makes all the difference.
Definitely. Really, I didn't realize how much getting out of the circle of artists had also kind of affected it. Like surround yourself with other artistic people and it will make you want to be artistic too.
Yes.
Yes. I would agree with that. Yeah. I have been really lucky to find a circle of writers. Funnily enough, they're mostly romance writers, even though I don't write romance, but romance writers just have all the good information and they know stuff and they get published and they make money. So, you know, they're good folks to have in your stable writer friends.
These are things I've heard.
Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of, I always joke, you know, it's like, you know, witches throw the best parties and romance writers also throw the best parties. I mean, it's that kind of situation too. So.
Oh, I would believe that. I feel like there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. Yeah. In my circle of friends, definitely. Definitely some overlap between witchiness and writerness. So.
The amount of fan fiction that I think Morgan and I have both written, we can probably relate to romance authors.
Is this some tea? Like what? So what is your fan fiction about now?
Oh no,
you don't have to tell me about the fan fiction, but what fandoms? You don't have to share the actual work.
You can know that in high school I wrote more than 100,000 words about Inuyasha, and that is all that you really had.
Yes.
You can go look up Inuyasha fan fiction and speculate who I am.
There you go.
Well, if we're willing to talk about fan fiction, I guess one of the things that made me, I could go back to amend to say one of the things that made me actually reconsider the validity of writing as well was I finally just started posting fan fiction and people really liked it. And I was like, no way.
Yeah, the fan fiction writing community, like I have other friends who that's how they started as well, writing fan fiction. And I feel like it's a really supportive group of people, like, because you're really writing for yourself and for people who love the same thing you love, right? Like you have the audience is very hungry for what you have to write. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, anime in particular, I'm not saying anything about other fandoms, but people love to ship characters in anime. And in high school, I was there to please people.
Yeah. So, no, it totally makes sense to me. And I think, you know, I just feel like it's a really good sandbox for writers to play in, you know, like, and I know there are like published authors who like, I can't, you know, and most published authors will say they don't read their fan fiction for legal reasons, which is probably smart. But I mean, for fans, I think it's a boon to have, you know, these like extra worlds if they want to go play in that and have their, you know, fan wishes serviced by fan fiction.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. And as a writer, it gives you a lot of, I mean, you go into it and you have a world that's made. You have characters that are made that you know probably pretty intimately that you can, you know what they're going to do in situations. So it gives you a lot of structure. And I feel like it helped me learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does just let you focus on the story aspect and the narrative aspect. As opposed to some of the things that can really bog down writers in particular, like the complicated world building stuff and how would this character respond to that, and you kind of have a structure to follow already.
Yeah, everybody knows who looks like what. You don't have to worry about character descriptions. You just go into it. It's all narrative.
Yeah, your storytelling instead of world building, which is a good practice. I mean, getting the story out is sometimes the hardest thing. Like sometimes world building, I think for different writers, it's different things. Sometimes world building is the easy thing and telling the story is hard. And sometimes plot is easy and making the scene go around it is the part that's hard.
I know for me, I could sit there and world build all day. I've always wanted to write fantasy, but I will sit there and get caught up on like the politics of two completely made up civilizations and all the history that's involved, and never get around to actually thinking about what the characters that I wanted to do.
Have you considered a Tolkien-esque fantasy writer life?
I've really been trying, because of that kind of getting bogged down almost in it, I've been trying to take the Studio Ghibli approach, the soft world building, and just seeing how that goes. I'll have to let you know though.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think, Quinn, it sounds like epic fantasy might be your realm.
Oh yeah, I've for a long time wanted to write fantasy, epic fantasy, or just something lighthearted. But I think that getting I don't know if I would call it like a nonfiction book, but our like reference book here out was it was really awesome, but it was not the book that I thought I would write first.
Yeah, I second that.
Oh, that totally makes sense to me. But I mean, do you feel like this has kind of given you both an opportunity to go, okay, yeah, this happened, so maybe that book that you did want to write first feels like it can happen more?
Oh, yes. I think that,
boost.
Yeah, knowing that it's doable feels, great. Knowing that, like, if we were to write more, we might already have people that know who we are, that have picked up a book that we've written before. I feel like there's a certain amount of overlap when it comes to people who enjoy epic fantasies and people who seem to enjoy the occult as well.
Yeah,
a lot of overlap on those Venn diagrams.
Yeah, definitely. And I you've been through, you've both been through like the slog of actually getting the book out into the world. So that, I guess adventure has already happened.
Yeah, it's a little less daunting maybe the second time around versus
learned
the first. Yes.
Yeah.
And, going back to what we had said before, with it's hard to navigate the publishing industry, maybe having a name for ourselves out there will make it easier to navigate in the future. Or, make some contacts with people in the industry.
Yeah.
Versus being completely unknown.
I do feel like there's a lot of validity in just being able to already have an audience of sorts to bring.
For sure.
Definitely. And I think that's something that traditional publishers look for now. Think, yeah, we like your book, but who are you going to sell it to?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. I know in my experience, there was not a large part of marketing, but there was a certain, the press that I worked for expected their authors to be willing to promote themselves, having a presence on social media was important. It sucks. There's probably a lot of good books that get looked over because of things like that, but
yeah,
it's what it is.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend a few years ago now, who's older. I'm almost 50, and so they're like in their 60s, and had known writers like in the 50s and 60s who basically got, like book tours were, paid, plane tickets and trains and hotel stays and all of this stuff.
Wow.
Like, yeah, yep. Like you can probably name the authors that happens for now.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a different world.
Very small percentage. Yeah.
The population has increased significantly since then.
Yes. Yeah. My cat is being very loud.
Oh.
Adorable.
Mom.
Yeah. He thinks he's in charge of everything. So, well, I guess one of the things, like kind of with this book, because it sounds like future writing could be very different, more in fiction realm. So what do you kind of want, like, your readers or, you know, the audience that you wrote this for, what do you want them to take away from this book?
Hopefully, I mean, I don't know. I know the cat.
I know. I was like,
I don't know if you can hear it, but my cat's meowing back.
I can't hear. I only hear the one, but gosh, what was I going to say?
what would you like readers to take away from this book?
Yes. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. The cat interrupted us.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I don't know that there's a ton of information. I mean, hopefully there's information that people haven't encountered before that they see in our book, but hopefully it's organized well. It makes it an easy reference book for them. You know, I think that our goal was to have it be, you know, a fun, visually interesting reference book for something that we love. So hopefully people pick it up because they enjoy, you know, the visuals and want a fun reference book.
Morgan, did you have thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yes. I definitely agree with everything Quinn said. And I really do think we just made it so that way other people could be creative with it too. Like it's not hard outline rituals or things you have to do. It's a lot of suggestions and fun ideas for further reading, for things that you can add to whatever day or night you want, really.
Yeah, I think we wanted to make sure that people could get the tools that they needed to find the information to kind of build a ritual or spell for themselves with kind of what these different pieces, you know, what the book shows you.
Here's all these fun pieces. Do with it what you will.
Yeah, this plus this equals this, and you can pick what you're taking from, you know, if it's a Taurus moon, are you looking for, you know, something fertility in the way of like you want to have a baby, or are you looking for, you know, you want to add some extra funds to your bank account, and you can take that plus, you know, whatever sign the sun might be in, and maybe it, you know, if it's a sign that helps you get it on with your partner, you can go that route and put the pieces together into a ritual that makes sense for what you want to do. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it is one of the things I like about it. And one of the things I like about the book is that it, I always joke, and I think I've said this on multiple times with different guests on the show, but like with a cookbook or with a spell book, like you want people to take detours and make it their own. And you've really set this up for that. Like, it's just like, here, take these snippets from these different things and put this together for you. With some, I love the Karen feeding warnings, like don't go to sleep with incense burning, and you know, there's kind of like safety first witch tips.
We wanted to cover our bases. Please don't sue us for your house burning down because we told you to burn incense tonight. I mean,
like.
But it's also important because I literally can't tell you the number of times when I've probably had like a dangerous interaction with fire because I decided I was going to light something on fire. In the back room.
There is a first time for everybody for everything.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, you know, fire safety is important. We talked about this a little bit before, but I live in an apartment and we have, I believe, the most sensitive smoke detectors in all of the United States in our apartment building. And so I have not burnt any incense since we've lived here because I'm sure it will set the smoke alarm off. Literally, I have set this smoke alarm off opening my oven just because it was hot.
I wonder if it's a heat
like
sensitive.
I actually had to have them come and calibrate the one in the kitchen because I was like, I should be able to bake without setting off the smoke alarm. So I'm so paranoid about lighting candles or anything. And the few times I have lit candles, like I've opened all the windows. Just like, please don't set the smoke alarm off. Yeah. And plus when it goes off, it is the loudest thing ever, and the whole building goes. So like I don't want my neighbors to hate their witchy neighbor who keeps setting the smoke alarm off.
Oh, is it a real fire or is the upstairs neighbor just burning herbs again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the one that gets it, because we also get a text message like when it's a false alarm after. And my favorite one is like, someone was smoking by the elevator. And I was like, literally, there are signs everywhere that there's no smoking anywhere on the campus of the apartment complex.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, did they really think being by the elevator was going to save them? Like, I don't know.
I feel like that's the worst place to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's an interesting dilemma. But yeah, I've like I miss incense a lot. And so like I've come up with different ways. Like I do some essential oil, simmer things and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there are ways around it, but fire is kind of integral to my practice. It's been a challenge.
Yeah,
Challenge.
I understand.
Yeah. But so we back to the writing, I guess. So I warned you and I warned all my guests that our last question is a game of chance. But before we get to that, I wanted to give you both an opportunity to talk about upcoming projects or what's coming next for you and where folks can connect with you.
Sure. Well, I mean, my life is endless projects. So I have lots of projects.
Real.
We did just make our workbook and put that out. So that's our latest project. I know that we're trying to not go too crazy right away since we've just gotten all of that together, but we're hoping to put together like a YouTube series on each one of the signs as well that kind of goes through similar information. But we've been excited as former art students to kind of have fun playing with animation and different types of editing with putting together like film project.
Oh,
so yeah, that's something that we've been kind of working on. We have some ideas to do a book on herbs in the future with some of our art as well.
Very excited for that one.
Yeah. I don't know. Are there is there something I'm missing? I mean, other than our personal like writing projects as well. I mean, hopefully we'll do more books, but
Oh yes, I think we're definitely on board for doing more books in the quote unquote Moon Manual series, however you like to categorize that. And super excited to kind of dabble in videos. It definitely feels like taking all the fun electives again.
yes.
Like, wow, that thing that I really wanted to try but couldn't fit into my schedule, guess what? I'm going to try it now.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, it should be fun, right? It should be fun.
Yeah, I think we're very excited about sort of like, I don't want to say like it like homemade or like low budget, because I feel like those are very kind of not great terms. But I like the idea of doing I don't know, I guess like growing up in the 90s, I feel like there were a lot of smaller budget shows that I really loved, and animation that wasn't all CGI Pixar type standard, kind of like what you see all the time. So I get excited about doing something that's very different when it comes to animation and stuff like that. That's a big exciting thing for me.
I know, when you said growing up in the 90s, like I for some reason immediately thought of like Robot Chicken.
Yeah, just weird. I don't know, but like it's fun.
Like anything on Adult Swim.
Yeah. Or cartoons, like they had like a ton of different like I think that was actually people who were animating stuff like in their basements that sent their pitches to Cartoon Network, who aired them and then took like the best of that and made them into cartoons. And it's like, I love that. I love, I just think there are so many cool artists and styles out there that just don't get showcased because we've got kind of like these models for how cartoons are supposed to look now.
Yeah.
Or like
just very like CGI cartoon kind of thing. Where
it's kind of like a cookie cutter kind of animation.
Formulaic.
Yeah. But I feel like even with our book, we kind of broke some molds with what a book is supposed to look like too.
But like I said, I really like it. It reminds me also, like, you know, being in college in the 90s, like kind of the zine, punk, DIY culture and all of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
I love that.
Awesome.
Not necessarily low budget, but like, you know, there are real people making it. It's not
achievable by a small group of people.
Yeah, maybe not as polished as, you know, something that's coming out of HarperCollins or something like that.
Yeah, that has its own personality. Like, it has its own personality. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So where can folks connect with you if they don't already follow you on socials?
I mean, social media is a great way. Instagram, we probably post the most. I do a lot on Pinterest as well. But right now, those are probably the biggest ones.
It's the Moon Manual everywhere. Is that right?
Yes, the Moon Manual, or you can find me at Quinn K. Dyer, is what we've got on. I mean, I have a Facebook and Twitter, but the Moon Manual doesn't I don't know. Am I missing anything?
Yeah.
We've got a newsletter I think you can get on our website. No, I know you can get it. I don't know why I said I think. You can definitely get it on our website. That's the only place you get it. Yeah.
Like, our website independently does newsletter that we may or may not know about.
Yeah. I think I'm not in charge of it, right? No.
I like the passive voice newsletter idea.
Newsletter? What newsletter? Never heard of a newsletter.
The super secret newsletter.
The super secret newsletter, yeah. Like another marketing thing, right? Another thing you have to do as an author. Okay.
We're soon to be on YouTube.
Yeah, it's soon to be on YouTube, which I see will be the Moon Manual on YouTube as well.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
That's taken.
Yeah, maybe I should go right now and get that now that I've broadcast that into the universe, right?
Well, since this is pre-recorded, you'll have plenty of time to go steal that before someone else squats on it for you.
Man.
So for our last question, I'm going to roll a die. And so there are two of you. We kind of pre-gamed this a little bit. If we don't like the first question, one of you can answer that one, and then we'll roll again and somebody can answer the other question. So I will roll a 6-sided die, this heavy metal one, so people can hear it clank on the desk. And if I, depending on the number, you'll get a topic about death, sex, religion, politics, or money. And if I roll a 6, you get to pick which one you want. And they are either related to your work or writing. I mean, I try not to just like blindside people with, you know. Despite my Scorpio nature, I try not to blindside people with stuff. So 3, religion. Interesting one. Okay. So this is a question. You guys can decide if this is a pass or if you'll take it. Sometimes looking at a full moon or like that perfect sliver of moon in a night sky, like, it's really easy to see why people worshipped the moon, like in antiquity and all that. So whether or not you have a devotional practice, do you have a favorite deity of the moon and why?
Favorite deity of the moon and why?
Quinn, that sounds like you.
I was saying, I don't know if I have a favorite necessarily. I love stories of moon goddesses. Artemis is one of my favorites. I love the idea of like the virgin huntress. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about necessarily deities. I think one of my fascinations with it, and probably like maybe a good explainer of like why I don't necessarily have a favorite deity, is just like, I just love that you can look across cultures and you can see how all of these different cultures have recognized the turning of the seasons and recognized the moon and, you know, how the moon moves through the sky, the phases and all of that, and that across different cultures we've all attached significance to these like natural occurrences. And I'm really fascinated with that. I don't know that I'm not particularly drawn to any deities in my practice necessarily. I tend to think of it more as deities across different cultures kind of representing similar concepts or, different lenses that you can kind of see aspects through.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the idea that, like, in Western cultures, we tend to see a man in the moon or like a human face in the moon. And in a lot of Eastern cultures, they saw a rabbit.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really fun which cultures or which just all across they've defined if the moon is masculine or feminine. I always thought that was really fun. Like, the same with the sun. It tends to always be like the opposite of each other, but like I'm trying to remember some of them, but in some of them, like the sun is the female and the moon is the male, and depending on where you're at, that's kind of like different.
Yeah, I think in Norse mythology, the moon is male and the sun is female.
I think so.
Which is a weird one for Western. Most Western ones, it's the opposite. But Norse is, it is a fascinating thing to see how it kind of plays out across cultures and
neat things. Very neat.
Yeah, because we're all looking up at the same sky. I mean, obviously the moon phases look different on the southern hemisphere, but I mean, they're still the moon phases. They're just the crescent is turned a different way.
Yeah, just like acknowledging those changes and the cycles is, I think, just, it's neat that all of these different ancient peoples kind of did it and kind of, it's a frame for all of their cultures when you look at their deities and what they've kind of applied to it.
Yeah. And I do wonder, like, I know I was thinking about this just having moved to California, and it's where we are, like, you see even less stars than where I lived in East Tennessee, just because there's so much more light pollution. And like thinking about being in those places where you can actually truly see the night sky, like see the Milky Way and be in a place that doesn't have light pollution or is darkness, is like, it's not, when you're in those places, I think it's not difficult to see why ancient humans looked to the sky. Now I think it probably, for people who live in urban areas, like, you don't look up that much.
Yeah, because it's not as fascinating. You don't see all of the beauty that you see when you're in the middle of nowhere looking at the sky.
Like one very vivid memory of actually seeing the night sky when I was visiting family in, I think it was somewhere very out in the open middle of America. And I, as a child, was like almost scared of it by how many stars there were out there. I was like, what is going on?
And the one very vivid memory that I have of being able to see the sky as you're supposed to see it was when I was traveling across the country. After briefly living in California, we were coming back to the East Coast and stopped in Oklahoma. And we were driving, it was the middle of the night, and I was like, we're just pulling over and we were going to stare at the sky. And we were out there for probably hours just looking at the sky. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It was just crazy the difference that it can make. And I'm sure, the middle of Oklahoma, it's probably even better if you're looking at it from the middle of nowhere in, Canada or Russia, where there's like, a lot less people.
Yeah. No, absolutely no light pollution. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first time I actually got to see the Milky Way, like it was almost overwhelming in that.
Yeah.
Just thinking about being on this tiny speck in the giant universe and like looking at all of those things and realizing those are all suns. So yeah, it is it's hard not to be cliche when you talk about it almost.
I never realized just how many shooting stars were actually out there and going on as well.
Yeah, we miss a lot in our modern cities and towns, I think.
Definitely.
when you're able to see it, you can totally understand how anybody in the ancient world would be absolutely fascinated. I mean, I'd be sitting there looking at the stars, trying to figure out their stories too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's such a lovely place to end our conversation. Thank you both so much for being on. And I hope folks will go buy the Moon Manual. And like I said, I recommend, as someone who reads ebooks and paper books, you might want this one on paper.
Thank you again for having us. This was really fun.
Yes, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation.
Great. And then when you guys get your fiction and fantasy books out in the world, come back on and we'll talk fiction writing.
So yes, we will hit you up the next time we have a book out.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
It was great talking to you. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
WitchLit is a production of Thousand Volt Press and is edited by Kaifel Agostini. Our music is Voices by Alexander Shenekar. You can support our work at ko-fi.com/WitchLitPodcast. And if you'd like to submit your own death, sex, religion, politics, or money questions, or have questions or comments about the show, you can send an email to victoria@witchlitpod.com. And please be sure to let us know if we can use your name on the show. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter @witchlitpod. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider giving us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps other witches find the show. Thanks for listening and for reading witchy.